Hello, and you reach now this conversation with Dr. Da Silva. Welcome to another show, another episode. And this is a show where your voice matters. And, mainly a while back, when I started this, I thought of bringing various different guests to come talk about things that they're really passionate about or a message that they want to pass on to others. So I really believe on the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And what John F. Kennedy said as well, he said, ask what you could do for your country, but what you could do, ask not what your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country. And I said, let's take one step further and see what we can do for each other. So this show, provides that opportunity for many to come on. And today we have two guests. From Glen Cove Senior Citizen Center, and we have Carol, and we have Lori. Thank you. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm happy to have you here. So what are we going to be talking about today?
I think Lori and I both would love to talk about ageism and the concerns we have that ageism sadly still exists in our culture. And I think we have to really work hard to change that.
Right. And before we start on that, I'm sorry, I meant to ask a little bit about what you do. What's your position at Glen Cove Senior Citizen?
I have the privilege of being the executive director. I've been in that role for about 16 years, and prior to that, the program coordinator.
Okay.
So I've been at the senior center for almost 3 decades.
Okay. And Laura?
I actually am Carol's assistant, and pretty much name it. We all kind of jump in. We serve a membership of about 2,000 people.
Wow.
So maybe 100 to 200 a day come through the doors, and there's a lot of activity. So there's a lot of also need, and every day is different. You never know what's going to happen, but we're right in the mix of the public. So we're always sort of on call, so to speak. And tomorrow actually will be my 7th year anniversary at the center.
We're having a celebration. She doesn't know about it, but
now
the public knows.
Now everybody knows.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, it is worth celebrating when people commit themselves and connect to this particular community, because it's a very special population.
Yeah.
And as I said, we're extremely privileged to serve them. So we want to celebrate everything. We believe that for the seniors as well, it's all about making every day as special as it can be.
Well, my congregation, I have a couple of members that do attend your center, and I've only heard so many wonderful things about it. Actually, one of our members had requested that, you should get some kind of exposure, and I said, yeah, and I contacted you in regards to that. But the Glen Cove Senior Citizen Center has got some pretty nice accolades about some of the wonderful things that your center has done.
Well, in keeping with your congregation, we very, very lucky to be able to partner with you many years ago, but to partner in a very special project called the Virtual Senior Center.
Okay.
And we got an awful lot of support for getting that off the ground, which helps the homebound seniors be able to feel like they have a connection to the community. And that's a huge opportunity for them, and it's a great opportunity for us.
Right.
So you've helped us with brain fitness work that we have done at the center. There was a $100,000 grant that the UU was kind enough to extend to us. And we had a year-long program providing brain support, which is critical because the amount of people beginning to have cognitive impairment is growing. And sadly, even in younger populations. So the sooner we get to do some preventative work and really help people stay stimulated, the better off we'll all be. And the UU is huge in helping us make that happen. Yeah, we had a conference, we had computer work that was done, we had clubs that were meeting, and we covered every topic under the sun that brought us closer to an understanding of how to keep our brains active. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Didn't I also film at the UU with Stuart and the second documentary we were making, did that
Yes.
take place at the UU?
It did. You gave us space so that we could put together, which we're still in the works with, because
Yeah.
sometimes, as you know, with production, it takes a
Right, of
while,
course.
but to try to, again, look at issues around ageism. And we got one of our seniors working with, it was an intergenerational exchange with a young student from a local school. They had a chess game. But during that chess game, they began to develop a relationship, and they started to look at the way each one moved, not just on the board,
Right.
but in life. And it was very exciting. By the end, they both were winners. So
That's
it was,
wonderful.
yeah, but you gave us the location for that through the UU. So again, thanks a million for that. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, just that, you said you thought that maybe some exciting things are going on, and
Yes.
one of the wonderful things that happened as a result of that was we worked on a lifelong learning program, which is a
Okay.
year-long program that provides lectures and workshops on a myriad of different topics. We have incredibly fabulous guest artists. In fact, we're going to probably invite you to join us at some point. And the thing that came from that is we received a Mind Alert award from the American Society on Aging, and we're really excited about that.
Oh, that's
So,
wonderful.
yeah,
Oh,
so we've
that's
been
great.
very lucky to get some great coverage, but it's the seniors and the work they do and the staff and the volunteers that really make that center really run.
Yes, it's a vibrant place,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that the community has an opportunity to have something like that.
We're
And
very
I
fortunate.
hope that you're able to be a model for many other senior center centers, around the country and so on. because
Thank you.
That says
Yeah.
something.
Thank you. There are right now in the county 13 senior centers that have Nassau County support through the State Office for Aging and the
Yes.
Federal Office for Aging through the Older Americans Act. Not all of them, unfortunately, have their own buildings, have their
Right.
own facility, and that gives us a great advantage.
Of course.
There's so many things we can do in ways that we could extend programming and transportation support that we get. So we're very lucky. We are one of the largest senior centers, but we feel proud to be amongst the others who are doing every bit as much hard work to keep their group, their community thriving.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right, so let's definitely dive into our topic. Ageism. What is it about it that you feel to be such an important aspect of addressing in our society?
Well, it's really at the basis for everything that we do in our aging world. There is the perception that people who are getting older are growing more feeble or becoming more helpless or somewhat absent-minded or at times stubborn. This idea that is what happens as we get older really is not completely true. In fact,
Right.
it's most of the time not true. And as a result, we have the response from the community that is not as favorable as we would like. We don't want people to be afraid to come to a center and have the opportunity to enjoy the programs and services we offer. Really, you add more years to your life when you come through those doors. But the perception is that getting older is a sad thing. And actually, it can be a very exciting time in your life.
Right.
So we really want to get people to be thinking a little differently about what it means to grow older. And I think that will help not just the people themselves, the individuals, but communities and resources and funding opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a few different aspects to what ageism is. So there is the institutional ageism, which really talks about the rules and the missions of larger organizations. So you have discrimination on an institutional level in areas, for example, like in the health field.
Right.
There are times when clinical trials are not able to be offered to an older population.
Right.
Anyone over the age of is not eligible, that type of thing. That's just one example. At a time, there was mandatory retirement, which is another example of an institutional ageism. But then you also have personal ageism, where you, for example, you can take someone to a doctor and the doctor looks right past the older person and talks to you,
Right.
the younger person. You're kind of feeling ignored, and really it's not us and them. We're really all one, and it is important that that person not feel like there's anybody's condescending
Right.
to them. Very often you'll have a person speak more slowly, speak loudly to them, because the assumption is as they get older, there would be less of an ability to
Right.
communicate. The reality is we get more sensitive and more alive as we continue to live life. And we are alive until we're not. So we want to keep that understanding there. So you've got the institutional and the personal,
Right.
but and we learn that in a really early age. I mean, I was thinking the other day about fairy tales that I was taught. Hansel and Gretel, for example.
Okay.
You've got this older man, the father, who is being led around by someone else. You've got this mean stepmother who's trying to get rid of the children. It's also negative.
Right.
You know, it's an old man, it's a angry old witch, it's everything around old
Right.
has so many negative pieces of language connected to it. So we learn very early that, oh, this is not necessarily a good thing. And then, of course, getting older is often connected to death.
You're right. That's right.
And this is a country that still struggles with their mortality. So we like to think of it as each person as they get older is still very much alive.
Right.
And we don't see it as necessarily a moment where we're heading more to death, but we've lived so much more life, our lives are so rich. So we acknowledge there are losses, that there are challenges. I mean, there's plenty of losses. People lose memory, they lose their sexuality, they lose their mobility sometimes. There's challenges to aging, but there's also opportunities and new adventures that you would not have as a young person. So that's part of the picture.
Let me ask you this, and because I'm a psychologist, and I specialize in family systems and family dynamics. So I work with various different families, and I'm from Brazil, so I feel, and I directed a senior service center way back when, and one thing that I did notice also, there was like cultural differences from various different ethnic groups. Is that something that you also find with the populations that you do work with?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. What I would say for the most part is not every center is lucky enough to have the extent of diversity that
Right.
Glen Cove has. We are a city, so we really see everyone.
Exactly.
And fortunately, people are comfortable coming to the center and sharing their stories with each other. But yeah, there are differences. But the bottom line is there is an underlying prejudice that exists
Right.
in our community, and whether it's from African Americans or white Jewish people, or there is just a sense that getting older is a scary,
Right.
negative thing. So there are differences for sure, but mostly I think there's that feeling of, at least in this country, that getting older is difficult, and that we connect it to decline and decay. And that's got to be rethought.
Now, another aspect that I also wanted to touch upon was the ageism. When we spoke initially the first time, when I thought of ageism, I was figuring out the connection, how it's related to what's happening in the labor aspect of employment and so on. I find that a lot of my friends around my age or older that have been in a particular company for quite a long period of time or whatever, they've been kind of like, getting rid of, and being replaced by a younger generation and so on, for multiple reasons. And what that does, also for some of the ones that after they retire, after working for so many years, and that's all they've done. It's like the work that they've done has become
It's
them.
their identity, yeah.
Yeah, and
sure.
now they're done, and you think they're like be appreciative of the time that they have now to be able to pursue other things, hobbies and travel and do whatever. But for some of them, it's really kind of it's a hard adjustment.
Absolutely.
A difficult adjustment to.
And part of that comes, I think, from what their leaving was about.
Right.
If they chose to retire because they felt they had other interests and
Right.
other adventures they wanted to have, that's one thing. But if they were asked to leave or encouraged to leave or, quietly, gently pushed out, that's not the way you want to get on with your life from a negative place like that. And it does happen, and as you said, for many reasons. Part of which is because it's financial.
Right.
They're making a lot more money, and they can bring in people younger who maybe have more technology behind them, but they can get for a lower salary.
Right.
So part of it may be just practical on the part of a company, but what it does, the message that it sends, is a very painful message and one that's hurtful to that person, and then they walk into the rest of the world with that to go on with. And you're absolutely right, the labor market alone is one good example of intentional ageism, because you have advertisements that say recent college graduate, and it's clear what they mean. They're not looking, for the most part, for an older person, because the majority of people are younger who go to college. Or, there are times where they'll say, well, you might not be right for this job because there's kind of a generational, cultural thing that is not going to work here. What does that really mean? Right. So, the labor market has a lot to look at in terms of making changes to make people feel more comfortable. Thankfully, there are laws and acts that have come into place where at least you're not, for the most part, forced into mandatory retirement anymore, the way we used to be years ago.
Right.
So some things have changed for the better.
Yeah. And another thing that I've noticed in the past 2 decades, where it was not really the case beforehand, is like you're seeing all these assisted living places pop up all over the place, and the cost for it, which it's putting a lot of strain on a lot of families, and what people have to do and so on, and it saddens me, in so many ways. So that's one other aspect that kind of like concerns me, but also
it does concern us too. It's prohibitive in many cases, and Lori and I work with our staff in fact, we're hoping to hold a public hearing in the fall with our legislators about affordable housing options, because people do need to make changes, perhaps downsize, move closer to family, and where are they going on Long Island? It's not easy for many people on fixed incomes. So it is a concern of ours, and we are working very hard to try to address that.
Exactly.
But in a way, there's ageism connected to that too, to housing, to health care, areas that really should not have it attached to it. It does.
Right.
If you look at what in the health field, for example, if you look at what gerontologists or geriatricians rather are paid, it's the lowest specialty, the lowest salary for any specialty is a geriatrician, and people are not encouraged to go in that direction. So, and the reason for that is because when you start off, she handles our wonderful internship and volunteer program, and she will be bringing kids from schools that are just exploring what options they want for their future. So, for example, one case, she brought a nursing group from Malloy College. We were so excited to show them around, and in the end, after we showed them fabulous seniors, terrific activity, most of them said they're thinking pediatrics. It's not so sexy to work with older people. There's a lot involved. And so there's a lot that, housing is one area where older people can struggle, but healthcare is another area.
Actually, Laura, I wanted to ask you, as far as intergenerational programs, what things are going on at the senior center as far as that?
Well, in our community, we really have a lot of intergenerational activities. We work with the daycare centers, so the littler kids, our seniors will be bussed over and we'll read with them or talk to them or play with them or do arts and crafts with them. We go into the elementary schools and we read to the kids, fourth grade, fifth grade kids. Carol and I, the first documentary, going back to the documentary, was made called Equal Grace. And we presented that to a couple of high school classes, private school, Friends Academy, and then also Glen Cove Public School,
Okay.
to show the high school kids, going back to ageism, you know, these are people who are in their 80s, 90s, close to 100, and they're still vital, and they have feelings, and they need social contact
Right.
or tactile interaction.
Right, exactly.
I was telling Carol the other day, I went to visit one of our younger seniors, she's in a nursing home, and as I was walking the halls, there were all these seniors lined up in wheelchairs, and I thought, they don't even get touched anymore, except maybe to help them get cleaned up,
Right.
but there's no hugging going on, and how important that aspect is to all of us, not just seniors, but I briefly taught kindergarten, and the kids would just wrap around my legs. We just need to be touched and held and share.
It's part of our human connection.
Yeah,
right?
so that interaction, we have a lot of that. Our 3 of our high schools hold senior proms for the seniors, and
Really?
they
Oh, that's
provide a meal, and there's dancing and music, and it's just, there's so much and then on the college level, the internships, we have college students coming and going all the time, working on different aspects with the seniors, from teaching technology, which is another problem, I think, with older in the labor force.
Right.
My husband the other day, I think I mentioned this to you, he said to me, you know, if we both lost our jobs, I don't know that we would be able to get other jobs. He's in his 60s, I'm in my late 50s,
Right.
because the technology is exploding, and
Right.
who can keep up with that? So there's challenges that...
So just to Lori's point, I think this really speaks right back to ageism. So as we go into the community and make attempts to try to include technology in what we do,
Right.
we're asking for support for that.
Yeah.
And the response sometimes that we get is, it's where's the bang for the buck? Where are we investing in the future?
Right.
We really want to put that money toward children who are going to have years of needing that kind of
Right,
support.
exactly.
But the reality is, everyone's future is aging.
Right.
And that's the one area that black, white, gay, straight, woman, man, this is, if we're lucky, this is where we're going to get to. And yeah, we need to keep thinking that people want to stay involved and engaged and aware. Our seniors want to be in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the now. They're living in
Yes.
this moment. They wake up and they say, how can we have the best day possible?
Right.
So if they're in the now, they want social media. Many of them are not intimidated. They're
Right.
ready. But then they need the people in the community to be willing to support them, or government willing to support them. So it goes back to doing a lot of intergenerational work, for sure. And because those connections are made for reasons of mentoring or training or tutoring, we start to exchange ideas. We start to see each other as human beings and not one age or another. And what we have to offer is pretty magical.
Right. Yeah, one thing that you mentioned beforehand, which is, I agree with you, our society, our country has, they want to avoid the issue of talking about that. And, and how that interplays in everybody's life, because we're dealing with it all the time. We used to have a gentleman, Craig Jennings, at our congregation, and he started the, caring for the caregivers, which is an
Huge.
important, it's a huge
Huge.
thing. I mean, I'm at that age. My mom right now she's got dementia. Had her friends, either Alzheimer's or so on. It's a life-changing thing.
Absolutely.
And changed many different aspects of how we address it and how we look at ourselves, and to see our parents aging. It's a difficult thing, especially the ones that we're so used to seeing them being so vibrant, so independent.
Yes.
All of a sudden,
Absolutely.
and then the ones that have families of their own, and they got kids and so on, and to devote time to taking care of their aging parents as well. It's a major issue.
It's a major issue, and it's nothing that we've been trained to do.
No.
The hope for senior centers like ours is not just to offer nutrition and recreation, but to become training and education centers for caregivers, because as many people have said in the past, you will either be a caregiver, you have been a caregiver, or you will be the person who needs care.
Right.
You'll have one of those roles.
Right.
So we need to get more comfortable with the long-term caring that we have to consider. Our population is growing
Right.
tremendously.
People living longer.
Absolutely. I've often said the earth is tilting. There
Yeah.
are going to be more older people than
Right.
younger. And so not as many people to take care of our older adults.
Exactly.
And we need to figure out how to take care of each other and get the support that we can, but help people in your position as children of parents
Right.
who might begin to this, help you navigate that. It's quite a journey.
It is.
And if you have someone holding your hand, if you have resources that are in place that know how to work together, you're really in a much better position to get the support you deserve, and certainly that your parent deserves. I mean,
Right.
our parents built this world. They built the ground we are on, and we owe it to them, and this is our chance to get it right.
And that's another
You
thing
know,
that saddens me as well. I grew up in Port Washington, and
wow.
you know, when I came here in 1975, and I see, friends of my parents and my parents as well, that they done everything. They give into the community. They pay their taxes. They pay their school tax, and they continue paying even when the kids are no longer in school. And they can't afford to live in their homes anymore for various different reasons. And the pension is not cutting it. Social Security is not cutting it. And I feel bad that a lot of them have to move out of the place where their roots were there, their friends are there, the community was there,
So,
and they have.
yeah, let's look at why that happens, though. It's happening because those people who are doing the urban planning or suburban planning are not considering those people. They're considering growth and development, which we all have to be excited about because it is a wonderful thing, but at the expense of those who cannot afford these gorgeous waterfront homes, and it's a real concern that we have. We want to make sure that we continue to find ways to acknowledge and help those people stay in community.
Right.
Most people want to age in place. That's just the reality, and we should be making every effort to make that possible for them. And it's not really that hard. It takes a commitment on the part of the community, on the residents' part, on the part of our government, local and beyond, to really say, okay, let's look at our zoning laws. Let's look at how we plan and what considerations are we making for this population. That has to be there. Are we making streets safer? Are the lights good? Where is are we being age friendly? AARP has a wonderful program that we're very proud to be a part of. It's called the Age Friendly Community, and we've just gotten that status in Glen Cove a year or two ago. Our whole goal is to find ways, not just for the elderly, but for everyone, to be able to manage to navigate a street at night or in the middle of the winter. It's really important that we consider these things. So you're right. There's a lot that we have to look at when we think, and it's all possible. We just have to change the way we're thinking. It isn't about money and greed and power. It's about people and giving people a chance to live life in the way they should.
Right. So I'm curious, for both of you, what made you decide to go into this field? What made you?
Oh goodness, you want to start first? You go first.
Well, I think we were introduced, I worked for Nassau County, for the legislature, for quite a few years. And as the community liaison for that particular legislator, I would go into the community and I got to know the senior center and Carol, so that was the connection. I then went into private for a little while, but a position came up and I had just by chance taken a civil service exam, and Carol saw my name and reached out and said, come work with us. So that's how I landed there, and since moved to Glen Cove as well. So it's just, being in the community, being part of the community. You probably have the same experience. I go to the supermarket and I can see, 5 to 10 of our members, and then who needs help, or it's just, it doesn't, I think both of our philosophies is we walk out the door of the building every day, but that our jobs don't end there. We're both very much part of the community. Carol lives in the community right next door, so it's just being community and service minded, a service heart type of philosophy. So that's how I came to be part of the senior center.
And I had a more circuitous route. I think I started off thinking that I was going to be a therapist. And I worked at the New York Center for Psychoanalytic Training, which is a postgraduate analytic training program. You may even be familiar with it. One of the many Freudian places at the time. I then decided after that that it was extremely heavy work and that I was prepared to enjoy it for the time, but that I wanted to do other things as well. So I got involved with another passion of mine, which is antiques. So I've come to love older people and older things. I did that for a while, and that didn't have enough substance, for me. Although it's always fun, and I'm still doing it. Anyway, I wound up teaching for a while, and then when I had children, I wound up teaching in the evening. And at that time, the evening classes were mostly older people. And I thought, oh, I'm really loving this. I love the gratitude. I love the resilience. There were so many things about the older population, their motivation, that really excited me. So when I moved from New York City out to Seacliff, I looked to find a place where I can work with older people. When I found it and became the program coordinator, I fell so much in love with the people I worked for that I decided to go back to school and get my master's in gerontology over here in Hofstra, and then eventually became the director. And it's been a love affair ever since.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So what would you say, or, you say you've been there for, 16 years now?
26.
26
Yeah.
years, wow, okay. So in 26 years, what would you say have been the most dramatic changes that you've witnessed that has affected a senior population? In a positive way or in a negative way?
Okay, certainly let me do the negative first, because I like to end on the positive if I can. The negative is that we are seeing more mental health problems. We are seeing more homeless because of what we had just discussed.
Right.
We're seeing more complex cases, so that people are not just dealing with one chronic illness, but there's a number of issues that come up in time. Fortunately for us, we have a continuum of care at our senior center, so we have an adult day program as well, which is wonderful. It's a social model, but it does offer respite care for caregivers, and it gives those who have frailty a chance to be stimulated and socialized. But we're seeing a lot more people who have those kinds of needs. We serve a very large number of people in terms of the years, chronologically, from 60 right now to 102. So it's 2 generations worth of seniors that we're serving. But we are seeing a little bit more of that. There is sometimes, unfortunately, drug problems associated as well because of the chronic conditions and the choice of painkillers and doctors and the way things are handled at times. So we're seeing a little bit more of that, addiction issues. We also struggle with the housing issue. I've never seen so many people struggling to figure out how to manage their finances. Some of that is in, medication versus food. Some people actually are eating cat food because that's what they can afford. That part is very, very difficult, and in that sense, I would say it's gotten a little tougher. The good thing is that there are more agencies out there. Where there is a lot more elder abuse, we now have agencies to address that. We have agencies that help us with case management in addition to our social workers. So there's a lot more resources out there for the problems. But the problems are growing with the population that's growing. Right. So that's complicated. On the other side, what I have seen is, because medicine has made such advances, I have seen people that I thought we would never see again come back and dance the tango. And there's so many more opportunities for people to live a life that they wanted to live and thrive because there is so much advances in medicine. And because there are so many more opportunities in community that there weren't before. So yes, there is still ageism, but there are also more chances to continue to grow. So I would say those are the large themes that have been there for us.
And what would be, if you had a wish list, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had a magical genie that would be able to grant like 3 wishes for you that you would have for, you know, for the aging population as a whole, what would they be? I know I'm putting you in the spot. I mean, if you thought about it beforehand or growing
The
up.
first one would be what children often say, I guess, I wish I could live forever. I wish that we can really, more realistically, I wish that we can just give them the kind of life that they deserve for as long as possible. And that could mean any number of things. You know, more money for more classes, more opportunities for more services. I would say that would be the main wish I have. How to keep people feeling that they are cared for, loved and supported for as long as they are alive.
What would you like also, and that's for either one of you, like to see more support from, you know, from our legislators, you know, from our government, you know, and that's one. And the second was like, what more would you like for the community to partake in, you know, the various different aspects of our communities, you know, whether it be, you know, corporations, companies, small businesses, congregations, churches, and so on. Because when I directed a senior service center in Newcastle back in between 91 and 93, that was one of the focuses that I tried to do. You know, I try to work with the various different aspects of the community to come and be part of it, and you know, because
partnerships are key. You're absolutely right. They are. But public-private partnerships are key. Years ago, I don't know if you remember, or it happened during your tenure as a person involved in senior centers, but it was discouraged because of liability, and people were concerned about bringing in private people who might influence in possibly a negative way a particular person's mind about whether or not to go for a certain kind of mortgage or what type of health options to pursue. So it was really discouraged. We've come a long way, and thankfully, commissioner after commissioner, Health and Human Services, our Office for Aging, has really come around to encouraging us. So we are always looking for opportunities for new partnerships. We partner a lot with schools, a lot with clergy and congregations, a lot with businesses, and we're always looking to do more of that. That's one of the most exciting parts, I think, of being in a community, is how can we figure out how to work better together. And Lori and I have so appreciated the Interagency Council that Glen Cove has, because it's a almost 40-member organization of all health and human services. And we get to look at not only what we each do and how we can work better together, but what are the gaps in service. It's one of the ways that we built a homeless shelter, because we realized that there was no one addressing that issue. So we're very lucky. Not every community has that kind of partnership arrangement, but this is terrific for us. This Interagency Council, I would recommend it to every community. I don't know if Newcastle had it, but it's really saved so many of us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I think we're lucky that we're in Glen Cove, because we have a building, as you said earlier. The senior center is there. We have a hospital there. We have a police department there. We have EMS. We have a fire department. We have so many resources. And everybody knows everybody. So it's like a giant family there. And we're always saying, oh yeah, he's related to his cousin who's, you know, it's really quite a unique community for a city of 28,000 people. It's very close knit.
That is true. I lived there. I lived there for.
Oh, you did live in Glen Cove?
Probably the longest place I ever lived in. I was there from was it 98 to 2012.
Oh wow, we need you to come back.
I know. I live in East Mackinac. I lived in the second oldest house in Glen Cove. It was never.
Was it a Cole's house? One of the Cole's houses?
No, it was right. The place, you know, the street, the place.
Yeah.
Where Conacher used to be, right across the street from there.
Yes, that was the Cole's family.
Right, and the house across the street, the yellow house. Apparently, that was the oldest one.
Okay.
But it was never. officially a landmark, and I guess the landlord at that time. I guess if you do make it officially, you got to maintain it in a certain way
Yes.
and
Yes.
use certain materials for that.
Becomes
so
expensive.
I think exactly. But I wanted to verify that, so I went to the Glen Cove Library, maybe to check out the archives, and the lady said, well, at that time, it was because it was like 1720 or something like that. So at that time, there was no Nassau County. It was Queens
That's a
County.
tremendous right.
So
Exactly.
she said I had to go to Queens,
Yeah.
to
Wow.
find out that information. I never did. But but I lived there for quite a long period of time, and it's definitely a interesting, diverse community.
Yeah.
So
Culturally, economically,
Yeah.
educationally, every which way
Yeah,
it
the
is. And it's
demographics
demographics
are
are great. Yeah.
pretty unique. So it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: as far as the seniors, the members of your center that come, what are the things that you find that they usually are having a challenge with, or that they request for the support or what they're looking for?
Caregiving is probably number one.
Right.
Yeah, it's really number one because they're often caring for a spouse, or in the case of a younger senior,
Right.
an older parent. It's probably the number one issue is caregiving support. As far as where we need to put our energy more. And what you said before really rings true to me, that you're trying to figure out how to manage this
Right.
now. We should be there for you. You should be able to turn to us and say, okay, guide me or help me with this, and we should be able to make that happen. One exciting thing that's happening, Lori mentioned the hospital. One exciting thing, the hospital is trying to get a center for caregivers off the ground, as they have in Peconic and up in Westchester.
Oh,
This is
okay.
North Shore
Right.
hospital system. But the Glen Cove Hospital is trying to create a caregiver center that would answer a lot of the concerns that someone like you might have. And we're so excited to be a part of trying to help that get off the ground.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And what are some of the things that the seniors really enjoy that your center provides them, that they really always say, make sure you always keep this?
I think they're
The
crazy
trips.
about the trips. Yeah, absolutely. They like to get out of the community.
Yeah.
And when you get older and you may not be able to make it into Manhattan, but you love theater, it's nice to have the repertory theater that's close by too.
Right.
It's not, so they get to still appreciate and do the things they love by making some adaptations and adjustments, and we're able to help them with that. So yeah, the trips are big. I think they love music. We have plenty of concerts and opportunities to dance, opportunities to do a lot of health and wellness classes. The seniors love that. They really are looking to stay healthy. They want good nutrition, and we do offer that with a good, healthy lunch. And anything having to do with an opportunity to be socially engaged with one another. So the karaoke thing is loads of fun, and there are so many.
Pickleball.
Yeah, we just started
Pickleball.
pickleball. Our program coordinator now is the pickleball ambassador for Nassau County, Eric Schumann, and he's really working hard to get us on board with that. So we're playing pickleball now.
I haven't heard that pickleball since I used to be on USDAN, Performing Arts Sports
Oh
Camp.
yeah,
So
my kids used to go there.
I used to work at the recreation department.
Oh, did you?
And that's where I learned how to pickleball. And
Wow.
it's the second time I've heard this, like this week. I hadn't
Wow.
heard that since back when I was back in like 80.
Oh, it's really come to
86
life.
or whatever.
Yeah, it's come
And
to
somebody,
life.
just a friend of mine, just twisted her ankle playing pickleball. I said, I haven't heard that since that time. And this is the second time this week that I've heard that, which is really funny.
Yeah, it's becoming a big thing
quite
again,
big,
and
right.
what's great is that an older person can
Yeah.
easily
Yeah.
play it,
Yeah.
because even if they have some limited mobility, they still can move around. It's a
Right.
smaller court than a
Right,
tennis court,
exactly.
and they really, the eye-hand coordination is terrific,
yeah,
balance.
I
It's
love the sport.
wonderful,
It's
yeah.
really fun.
So, I would say those are the things that are probably most exciting for
Yeah.
them.
And Glen Cove has been very supportive, right? How many pickleball courts are there now in Glen Cove? 2 or
Yeah.
3?
Really?
They've repaved, they've cleaned
That's
it up.
fantastic.
So
That's good to
again,
know.
the
Yeah.
interaction and the community support is, you can't do it without
No, exactly.
everyone pitching in together.
But I think, to your point about looking at seniors, I think our experience has been not that the world gets smaller because they don't have as good vision perhaps, or they have
Right.
trouble hearing, or they've lost a spouse, or they have to change the landscape of their home. I think the world expands if you allow it to. And I think we are very fortunate that we're promoting an environment where there's growth. And so much so that, even on a subliminal level, we have herb garden, a heritage herb garden, to honor their histories and their backgrounds. We work hard to just get the message out. We have a gallery, an art gallery, where their artwork can be displayed and they can sell. And people from the community come. The public comes, so we're not just a little building unto ourselves.
Right.
So I think they enjoy that. I think they feel, and we do a lot of outreach, which is the other thing we're very, very proud of. We've helped during Katrina, we've helped during Sandy, we've helped in El Salvador, we've helped with Puerto Rico most
right.
recently.
And we
What
just
a huge
did
fundraiser.
the Letters of Hope. Is that what we called that?
Yes.
We wrote letters, translated them into Spanish, and sent them to the children of the immigrant children who were, I forget the company that was housing them temporarily, who were separated from their parents. It was in Syosset.
That's great,
And
though.
so we just sent letters, and they wrote things like, "You are not alone. I love you. Hang
Yeah.
in there. You will be okay." And then, we do the foster program with the pillowcases for
Right.
the children who are, if you're evicted suddenly in the
Right.
night. There's an organization that puts together pillowcases and decorates them, and then throws in a toothbrush and a teddy bear and a little blanket, or things like that, to give to these children, so they have something to grab, or they have something to.
That's great.
They're given something if they're
That is wonderful.
sent into the foster system, so that they're not
Yeah.
just without.
I mean, the goal is mostly to recognize that this is a thriving community,
Right.
these seniors, and they not only ask for support, they're very willing to give it if
They
they're
have a
given the
lot to
chance.
give.
So
And to
we're
that
always
note,
looking for
Carol,
that.
I think purpose
Yes.
is one of the answers to your question. And one of the other things I do is I'm the volunteer coordinator, and we have a core now of about 200 plus volunteers.
Wow.
Many are seniors, and so they run our thrift shop, and community comes in. We've become known now as the place to shop.
Right, that's fantastic.
And we wouldn't be the center we are without our volunteer corps, because there's no way our staff, as large as it is, could do what's done. We have a volunteer who runs the art gallery, and a volunteer in the library, and volunteer gardeners for the herb garden that was mentioned, and volunteer servers for the meals, and I could go on and on.
Yeah.
It's really quite incredible. And I think, just to go back a little bit to what the seniors have learned or got, I have to make it personal. I have grown so much in these 7 years, and I have been humbled by my job. I'm going to cry.
That's wonderful. And that's such a key word. That's such an operative word. Purpose. We all want to have purpose. We all want to be
Right.
recognized and acknowledged, and feel a sense of accomplishment, achievement, and to give people that aspect of, like you said in the beginning of the show, that a lot of these people, or the preconceptions that people have, and so on, that you get to a certain age, you're
They're
done.
throwaway.
Yeah, and I can't imagine what that feeling is for people that have been so active all their lives, and they recognize what's going on because of some of the limitations and so on.
Absolutely.
And to be, kind of put aside of that, that must be a fear for those getting to that age,
Yeah.
that this is something I'm going to go through too.
Yeah. You mentioned before, and I think this was so important, about your friends who were retiring,
Yeah.
and that feeling of sort of not having the foundation anymore, or the connection to an identity. I think what happens, at least in my experience of getting older myself, and also for the seniors I've worked with, I think you let go of some of those things at some point, and you start to recognize that it's not about what you did, but who you are. And you are still very much who you are, and becoming more so every day. So that's a growth that you don't even think about most of the time when you think about an older person. And eventually what happens, and this is part of just the process of living our lives, is you get to feel more connected to the larger picture. And I think that's what happens at our center. Even though technically as a government agency we're not allowed to be religious in any way, but we have a spiritual quality, I believe, that is probably inside every center. And I think I'm most excited about that I see our seniors feeling like they have a connection to life in general, but to each other. And it's what you said before about why you wanted to start this show. How do we connect with one another? And how do we make a real community? This is one small way, a senior center that's really encouraging people not to have ageist attitudes and to catch ourselves, because we are the most ageist. The older community is the most ageist. Oh, I'm not going to that senior center. I'm too young for that. What does that mean? Why do you have that feeling that you're going to be made to feel uncomfortable or unhappy by being there? So we have to work on that, and once we do, I think we're going in the right direction.
That's fantastic. Look, I'm getting ready to wrap up here, so I want to give you an opportunity to something that you want to share with our viewers, what you want them to get from this episode, and what would be something that you would want them or hope that they come away with. So if you could share that with our viewers, what would that be?
It would be my hope that by listening to some of the things we've said today, that each person will go through the course of their day being a little bit more sensitive to their own perceptions and misperceptions, and be able to call people out in gentle ways, but call people out where they need to, so that you can train and teach other people, to be a little more sensitive to the process of getting older, which actually is quite an exquisite thing.
Carol, thank you so much, and Laura, for joining our show tonight. And I just want to continue. You're quite welcome, and I just want to wish you continued success with your endeavors. It's important, imperative work, the work that you're providing, the service that you're providing to the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you at the
Senior
Center.
Yes,
I'll come for some karaoke, some chess, and maybe even pickleball.
All right.
There you go.
Okay.
So, and to our viewers, thank you for another, showing up for another episode of Conversation with Dr. da Silva, and hope to see you next time. Have a good day.